Last week, 83,000 illegals came into this country. That is more than the capacity of Cowboy Stadium. Just let that sink in. That's a large town or the average suburb in America, and that came in one freaking week. But if you ask the bright minds over at the Washington Post, who I assume didn't actually go to the southern border last week, it was just a reset, but not a surge. But the administration, the treasonous administration, wants you to believe they have this under control because this administration thinks you're stupid and every single one of those traitors are lying to you. And are you ready to be even more infuriated? These illegals, yeah, they are pushing out homeless veterans for space in hotels, housing, and other facilities. The message is pretty clear from up top. If you serve your country and end up homeless, screw you. If you invade our country with no respect for it, Democrats will give you perks, treats, hotel rooms, cell phones, and the key to the whole flippin' kingdom. Illegals are coming to a city, town, or community near you. You can bet on that. What ought to happen is all the states that voted for Biden in 2020 get the illegals. Pack all of your dreamers into blue cities and states, and you enjoy. And as for the holdouts, the patriots, the decent people who are still holding it down in these liberal bastions, those liberal hellholes, get out now. A flood is coming, and you better find an ark and a red state like now. The border can be secured. Trump did it in less than 4 years, and he did it with Democrats and Republicans kicking and screaming. What's happening now is not some Biden blunder. It's a clear and distinct choice, a vision and a game plan to bolster Democrat voter rolls for decades to come. If conservatives, Republicans, the GOP, ultra freaking megas, whatever you want to call us, don't make the border or lack thereof a major election issue in 2024, we simply don't deserve the presidency or Congress or any of it. Close the border, build the wall, protect this country. Joining me now with more of the truth the mainstream media doesn't want you to know, National Border Patrol Council Vice President Art Delgado. Art, it's great to have you back. I wish it was under better circumstances.
Thank you, Tomi. I appreciate you having me on. You know, it's been chaotic since day one, to be honest. Day one of this administration is when everything blew up. You're aware of it. You've been talking about it for quite some time. And, you know, now you hear people say, well, you know, it's been a problem for a while. Yet a lot of these individuals, and I'll speak specifically of some of the people from Venezuela that are coming into the country. They're asking for asylum in the United States. Granted, they're supposed to ask for asylum in the first country they stepped in, right? But a lot of these people that are asking for asylum, they've been living in places like Mexico, like Ecuador, like Colombia for 2-3 years. So why did they not ask for asylum back when President Trump was in office? It's obvious. It's because this presidency, this administration has just made it that much easier to come across. And when you talk to these people and you actually ask them, hey, why now? They're very open about it. They'll tell you it's because this is what irks me. And it does bother me. They tell me directly, it's because your president said I can do it and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's how frustrating it is. And, you know, the frustration amongst the agents that are out there putting their lives on the line still each and every day, because they're hearing that from individuals that are obviously breaking the law and they have no backing from this administration or from many of the leaders within this agency itself.
You know, I talked to Brandon Judd last week, and he told me when you have agencies and government filled with activists, this is what you get. But I do want to address some of the news that came out over the weekend. We know that late last week, they reinstated this Trump-era asylum rule where, as you mentioned, you do have to claim asylum in the first contiguous country that you enter. And that was a Trump-era rule that seems like a common sense thing. I'm glad that it has been reinstated, but I'm not fully confident that this is going to actually fully be reinstated or that there's not going to be loopholes or workarounds, because it seems to me these illegal immigrants, these criminal organizations, these cartels, if they can find a workaround or a loophole, the Biden administration's not going to close the loophole. So where are we with this new, I guess, reinstated asylum plan?
Well, it still falls under the famous gotaways that I've talked about for a long, long time. So you're right. They already know the loopholes. They know how to do it. They're going to continue with, pretty much lying and saying, hey, I'm coming from Venezuela, and they'll lie that they weren't in another country, and it's hard for us to prove that they weren't. They ditch all their passports. They ditch all their, documentation that shows who they are or where they're coming from. So that's even harder to prove. And then they come across, they ask for the asylum. But let's get to the point. The cartels are the ones that are telling them where to cross, how to cross, and how large the groups are. And that is what is sending agents to that area. Now they have to worry about processing, transporting, and everything else. That's when you get the gotaways. So these other individuals that it's harder to prove, that they haven't been in another country or they have serious criminal records, that's where you get the gotaways. And you're going to continue to have those gotaways because of the magnet that the administration has created. But how do you stop it? You stop it by implementing real policies that are already on the books. Nothing new. Just implement the laws that are already there. Detain people at the border when they're coming across. Do not release them. Do not just say, hey, here's your court date, which is 5-6 years from now, and let them say, I hope you show up. Can you pinky promise you're going to show up? That's pretty much what they're saying. But they're releasing them. What you do is you detain them, you hold them there. You have immigration judges, you have asylum officers. They're on the line. You look at each case, because I believe in immigration, but it's got to be legal immigration. And those that are able and eligible, fine, let's go through the process. But everyone else, you detain and you send back. That will send the message that if you're coming across, it's not a free-for-all, it's not a catch and release. That alone is going to deter the numbers. That's how easy it is. And it doesn't cost the taxpayers that much more money than it's going to cost, because all you have to worry about is detaining them. And it's going to only be for a while. The word will spread and they'll say, I'm not going because now I'm getting detained. Now I actually have to prove my case. And that is what this administration is failing to do.
So Art, let's talk about detaining though, because when you already have Border Patrol facilities and even the NGO facilities completely overpacked and overwhelmed, there are statutes put in place that say that you can't detain people for more than a certain number of hours, especially if your capacity is already at a certain limit. So I believe that that's also being exploited because these illegal immigrants, these cartels, they very well know that the laws, the humanitarian laws that we have in place to make sure that these illegals are not detained. So what do we do in that situation where all of these areas, these processing centers are completely overwhelmed? There just is no space.
So Tomi, we are talking about, the Flores ruling, which
Yes.
says you can't hold it if they're accompanied by a juvenile for longer than 21 days. Okay. But if you start actually having immigration judges and asylum officers there to look at the case and fast track them, having some of these quick courts that we've had before, or put a lot of people together in the court and actually look at their cases, then that will deter the numbers, because they realize you can get the cases done within those days and then send people back. That'll drop the numbers. But then you have other areas like, in Arizona, which it falls under different rules because there was a lawsuit quite some time ago. They call it the Jane Doe lawsuit. So out in Arizona, you can't detain these people longer than 14 days. But it can be done. You need to have the political will, and you need to have the individuals down there on the line looking at the cases as they're coming through. But obviously, putting the cases up and saying, please show up to court in 5 to 6 years, that's never going to work. You've been down here. You were here during all the scandals when we were having all those unaccompanied juveniles. All those juveniles, and we're going to date ourselves, you and I. All those juveniles are full-grown adults now. Ask this administration if they know where they're at, and none of them are able to tell you.
You're right. And speaking of these court dates in a mystical time and place, we actually had, of course, our Fox News crew down there asking these migrants when their court dates were. And we actually have visuals of one individual that their court date wasn't until 2027. So again, by that time, we've already got hopefully a new administration in office, but beyond that, how many children is this person going to have at that point? Then it's going to be, you can't separate the families. This whole thing is a cycle. But I want to talk again about the numbers over the weekend. We had, of course, Mayorkas running to the rescue on the Sunday show on CNN, saying that it's absolutely extraordinary what this administration has done. Let's take a listen, and then I want your reaction.
Over the past 2 days, the United States Border Patrol has experienced a 50% drop in the number of encounters versus what we were experiencing earlier in the week. It's extraordinary what we've done over the past 18 months or so.
It's extraordinary, Art. It really is extraordinary. I also believe it's extraordinary, but I don't think for the same reasons that Alejandro Mayorkas would say.
It's sickening, Tomi, but I am going to tell you what is extraordinary. It's extraordinary that the men and women wake up each and every day. They go put their lives on the line. They continue doing what needs to be done because it's the right thing to do, regardless that this administration And a lot of the leadership within this agency has given agents every single reason not to care and to give up. Yet they're still out there and they're still putting in the hard hours. They're doing what needs to be done. There's still agents in some areas that are still patrolling, but, limited resources because everything's put over there in the processing centers, limited transport. That's just a dangerous situation that they're in. That's what's extraordinary, that they're still doing it because it's the right thing to do.
No, you're right. And you know how much I love the men and women of Border Patrol. They do such a fantastic job. They've been demonized for years. They've been undermined, especially in the last 2.5 years. And we give all the credit to those men and women that are still out there, still doing the job. And I'm so glad that you guys are such a voice for those people that are often voiceless. And they've done an extraordinary job, even with all the obstacles and the apprehensions and the marijuana they've seized, the meth they've seized, the fentanyl they've seized. I mean, when you look at the numbers of this stuff, they've really been able to get a lot of it stopped, although we do worry about what's been able to come through no fault of their own, by the way. I want to also talk about these folks on the terror watch list that imagine that have been able to slip through the cracks. Bill Malhusian reported over the weekend that in California, an Afghan terrorist on the terror watch list was able to slip through. What should the American people be concerned about on what's coming across this border, especially in the numbers that we're seeing with little to no vetting and then basically a catch and release policy?
So the agent has reported that they've apprehended individuals from 160 different countries. That alone is scary. We've talked about a lot of the people that are coming from Venezuela that are coming through El Paso. We're also having a lot of people that are coming from China and from Cuba. Though a lot of those individuals have been coming through, different areas of Texas. In Arizona, you're seeing people that are coming in from Africa, from Pakistan, from Dubai. So it's just so many different individuals from different countries. I know Yuma's been having issues with a lot of people from Russia and Ukraine in the past that are coming through. And those individuals, like you said, they're never going to show up to their court date. They're just coming in, they're getting released. And then look at who it is that's coming across. I just flew out to Texas and I flew out of the Tucson airport. And that airport was jam-packed with a lot of these individuals that had been released through the third-party NGOs. They had been released and they were flying to different parts of the United States. And a lot of them were military-aged men. That's who's coming across and getting released in the United States. I mean, it's something that's not only just affecting us right now, and we're talking about it, but unfortunately, we're going to be talking about this for a long time, and this is something that's going to affect many generations. The world that you and I grew up in, that world is no longer going to be in this country because we've allowed this to happen.
Yeah, and allowed it to happen, encouraged it to happen, created a magnet for it all to happen. You mentioned before, a lot of these people are ditching their passports and their documents and their records when they come over. So we really have no way of really knowing who a lot of these individuals are. If they have a criminal history, especially if they're a gotaway, we have no clue whatsoever, and what they could do, what they want to do, what they will do, who they're working on behalf of. The left really wants to make this a race issue. And you and I have talked about this before. 50% roughly of our Border Patrol agents are Hispanic, Latino. All right. This has nothing to do with race, especially when you look at all the countries coming in. I don't care if they're coming through and they're looking just like me. If it's a lot of little 5'4" blonde girls coming through, I don't want them coming into my country if they're coming illegally, just point blank. But I think that there needs to also be an emphasis on where we go from here and what's going to happen while this administration is still in office. What do you predict, Art?
Look, you hit the nail on the head. It's not a race issue. I say it all the time. Illegal is not a race. I got family that are here that were born in other countries, and they came here and they went through the right process and they did it correctly. The drug dealers that are coming and bringing drugs into the United States, they don't care about race. They just want to sell the drugs to people and make money. They don't care about political parties either. They just want to be able to bring their product and make more money. I think, moving forward, we're going to have a very difficult time until this administration has the political will to stop it and actually do something about it. And they talk about it being humanitarian. There's nothing humanitarian of these individuals turning over their children to drug smugglers, to human smugglers, going through rough terrain, especially now with the summer months that are coming into the United States. And at the same time, they're handing over individuals that are being hidden in trunks of vehicles, going through high-speed chases. What these drug smugglers have been utilizing now is drug addict drivers, because they realize that once the drug addict ends up into the facilities where they're being detained, they're going through withdrawals. So it's even harder for law enforcement to keep these people here. I'm telling you, it's a complete mess. It's a free-for-all. And these criminal organizations, it's something that's been generation through generation. they've perfected the craft. Unfortunately, they know what they're doing, and it's going to continue. We need to put a stop to it. I mean, I don't even know where we go from here, but it's gonna take a lot of people to open up their eyes and realize that you've got to either love this country more than you have idiotic hate for the last administration, because the administration that's in office today is what's ruining our country. And it's not just now. We're going to suffer for many, many years.
Right. This is not something that is easily reversed. I mean, you've got over 6 million that have come in the last 2.5 years. Add that to probably the 20 million that were already here over the last several decades. I mean, you've got a recipe for disaster. But Art, we appreciate you. Please let all the men and women of Border Patrol know that the silent majority has their back. We appreciate them for going out there every day, even when it's not easy, even when they are undermined, and even when they are completely demoralized. We appreciate them, and we certainly hope they get some real leadership in that White House in the next 2 years.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Always, Art. I'll talk to you soon.